Oh boy. Good morning. Greetings, everyone, wherever and whenever you are. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. For those of you who are here live, thank you so much for your patience. I know we are behind this morning. OBS was just crashing constantly every time I tried to do anything. I had to be kind of creative about the way that I was uploading images and preparing for today's broadcast. So I appreciate people's patience that we're waiting for the live stream. So welcome back, everyone. Today is Monday, the 13th of March, 2023. It is the Starseed Ministry, and I'm so glad that everyone is here. And of course, if this is your first time here, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. Remember that when you interact with this content by hitting the thumbs up button, by subscribing, by, you know, the drill, right? When you interact with the content, it actually, impacts the algorithm that pushes this content out there. So, of course, if you are a regular viewer and subscriber, just don't forget to hit the like button, because it does actually lead to more people finding this channel. So if you do actually value this content and what I am bringing forward, chances are other people will as well. So welcome to March 13th, 2023. Whew, man. And not only was OBS just like completely shitting the bed this morning, and doesn't matter how many times I rebooted, the computer, it just kept crashing over and over. So, but beyond that, there is all this other stuff that has piled on as of this morning. And friends, it's been a rough week. It really has. And we'll get into the weekend and just kind of touch on a little bit of the astrology that goes along with the excitement, if you want to call it that, over the weekend with resources and banking. And, Moon in Scorpio. The Scorpio and the 8th house is about the banking system. It is about returns on investments. It is about sharing and cooperation and relationships producing that are more than the sum of its parts. And that is loaded. It certainly is. And when we talk about Scorpio in the 8th house, it is for better or for worse, right? And so that communion, that sharing, that cooperative relationship produces something. And it is more than the sum of its parts. But that doesn't always mean it's exactly what do we want it to be. And when we see today's reading, we're going to see just how much difficulty I think we have coming into the moment and coming out of the moment in terms of decisions, and maybe some hard choices that we have to make if we have been kind of avoiding making some hard choices. So it's been a rough week, right, across the board. And I say that because, of course, my own personal experience, what I have been experiencing in my own way, it's been very heavy. It has been overwhelming. It has been unstable in a lot of ways. Lots of people reporting to me personally and privately their own stuff going on. Some people hitting a wall, some people being very shocked and having unexpected things turn on them on a dime, and having to make really big decisions and come to face very large changes that I anticipate are going to be very difficult, and many people are going to put their heads back in the sand and be like, well, if I just ignore it, it'll go away. Or if I just don't give it my energy, then it's not real. And the reading does not suggest that that is a very good strategy, although it will probably be, unfortunately, the reality for many people. And we also have to live with how that makes us feel, especially if we're not in that position, that we know where we stand. We still have to stand in our integrity, and that might lead us to having to make difficult choices that we would rather just turn away from. So it's already been rough. Tomorrow is the 14th. We have a third quarter moon. So we are just coming out of the full moon phase. So we had a full moon in Virgo on the 7th. There was a large volcanic eruption down in Indonesia, and there are some warnings for eruption in Alaska. Alaska's seismic activity has been consistently active. If you're tracking it at all, it has just been consistent, especially all around the Pacific Northwest, but specifically Alaska. So for those of you who are familiar and you've been paying attention, you're a part of this channel, especially, and you know that the full moon imagery had to do with this cathartic eruption that was very volcanic. You can see that across the board, from the literal to the personal and subjective, it's been expressing itself in a number of ways. Now, we're just coming out of the full moon, so we're in the disseminating or the waning gibbous of the lunar cycle into our third quarter, which is a ideological crisis, a crisis in consciousness, right? And so as the light of the moon is waning and those organic, impulsive energies with the new moon in Pisces are starting to fade, and we have to consciously and very directly take what we have seen and what's been revealed to us at the full moon in its entirety and apply that objective experience to the fulfillment of this lunar cycle, but without all of the impulsive, instinctual, organic aspect of the new moon, where we're reacting to things very naturally. Now with the full moon, it is very objective, and it's our responsibility to consciously apply them, which is always more difficult. So when we get to the third quarter and we have that ideological crisis, the idols start to fall away. The falsity of illusions start to dissipate, and we see things for what they really are. And that crisis point, it's going to be with the moon in Sagittarius, as we're going to have it come into Sag today. So the disseminating moon leading up to this point is where the message is conveyed. And you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And I know many people are either feeling that within themselves, or they are experiencing that in relationships and all manner in their life, where they're like, this is the message, and really frustrated that people aren't listening. Boy, that was a lot over the weekend. It is getting really old, I'm going to say, for people to consistently basically sweep your perspective under the rug when you have been pretty consistent for the most part over, the last 4 years, and remain vigilant about one's own relationship with society and what's happening, and to know how to read the writing on the wall, because we're well past that now and we are just living through the experience. So, Pluto's in the last degree of Capricorn, and in a mundane way, Capricorn is the economy as a whole, and we're at the end, right? By the time we get into this next lunar cycle, which is a new moon, the day after the equinox, during that cycle, Pluto comes into Aquarius. Now, it will retrograde later this year back into Capricorn, so we're not quite done with the full demolition of our economy, but I assure you, it's on its way. It's already happening. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get more into the astrology and kind of make those connections astrologically to what happened over the weekend and what is now a snowball avalanche effect that we've known, many of us have known for a while is coming, and has been building and building and building. And then it's kind of one of those things where you're like, oh, it's actually here now. Oh, shit. It's actually happening, and nothing you can plan, you can intellectualize, right? You can run the simulation all day long for as long as you need to, but nothing ever takes the place of the lived experience, which is where our real learning actually comes from. And you can apply that to anything, right? You can apply that to any situation. And so apply that to here, right? So I was definitely on the phone this morning because there were certain, resources that weren't where they were supposed to be at a certain time. And there were definitely some tears this morning, just out of pure frustration and just, fear, right? So that's the other thing too, is like, don't squash your emotions away because somebody told you that, you shouldn't have any, right? Fear is not something that you're supposed to push away. You are supposed to face it with courage, right? Be not afraid, be courageous, right? Have faith. And that's what this transmission is really about. Do you have undaunted faith? Can you face situations that seem like a failure in some ways and have that motivate you to creatively come up with a different plan, right? Because this is going to be the remainder of this year. And like I said, Pluto in its retrograde will move back into Capricorn. And so there is more demolition of the economy to come, in terms of the actual ins and outs, the actual material institutional aspects. But it's happening now, and it's been happening, right? We know that it's been happening, but being in the last degrees of Capricorn, it is at that executive level. So for those of you who are paying attention to what's happening in terms of the financial system, we had one major bank pretty much go under over the weekend, and it has just been snowballing ever since then, with regional banks basically folding. And of course, if you're really paying attention, then you know that many of the executives of that particular bank pulled a lot of their assets, right? Sold their stock, like high percentage, like at least a quarter, if not more percentage of their own stock in that bank, the executives of that bank, a month ago, while, certain people who are in the mainstream financial news were basically telling people, or advising them, that's the word I'm looking for, advising them to buy the stock of this said bank, while at the same time the very executives were selling their stock. Okay, so we know this is controlled demolition. We've been aware of this for a really long time. I hope so. I hope that we're aware of it. And if there are people in your life that are still just like, not getting it, that is because their journey most likely has to do with getting, the kick in the head about it, right? Some people, that is how they wake up. And I'm not suggesting this is necessarily a good thing, what we're experiencing, but just because we are aware of it and it's happening doesn't mean that we can't find an opportunity in that situation. So, one thing before we move on, we do have our spring equinox, or I should say our vernal equinox, the equal amount of light and day, regardless of the hemisphere you're in. This is going to be on the 20th of March. On the 21st, we're going to have a new moon in Aries. And then on April 20th, just 4 weeks later, the next lunar cycle will be a total solar eclipse at the very last degree of Aries. And I'm going to go over that degree because by the time we get there and that eclipse, it is going to seal us into a window or a time frame, just like all eclipses do, of the entire 6 months where we will have to realize our boundaries, right? It's great to have all of this potentiation and desire and impulse to be, and all those incredible Aries energies that really have us acting in accordance with that impulse, to be inspired to move with the spark of life. But that eventually, that seed must be planted, and there is a substantiation and a confirmation of that comes at the very last degree of Aries. And the fact that we're going to have a solar eclipse at that degree, and asteroid Juno over the weekend has just passed over that degree, right? The goddess of, balancing the scales. I have felt this for a really long time, and I don't listen to other astrologers, and it's not because I don't think that they're valuable. I just can't, right? People send me stuff all the time, and I'm like, that's great. You find value in that, but I can't afford to necessarily have my channel, right, if you want to call it that, be influenced by what other astrologers say, because I need to have what I do be for lack of a better term, it has to be pure. I have to know that what I'm reading is not being influenced by other readers. And that's really hard because it kind of comes off as like, I don't want to listen to other astrologers, but it's not that I don't value. Believe me, that's how I learned is consuming other people's astrology work daily for years. That's how I taught myself how to do that. Well, it's more about how I instigated the memory of doing this work. I didn't really have to learn, and I didn't actually learn formally from anyone. It was like, oh, I'm remembering that I already know how to do this. But I did listen to lots of people. And if that's what you do, I mean, that's important, cross-referencing. The point I'm trying to make is that for a long time, the essence of this upcoming solar eclipse, which is on the new moon on April 20th, has always been to me like wherever you are planted, that's where you're staying. And it was I don't want to say it's a trap, but some people it will be, right? Some people will be like, this is where you are now. Right? This is where your seed has been planted, and you're not just going to get up and walk away. So we still have some time to really become aware of that and to plan for what that is going to entail. Because, of course, with an eclipse, it's at a distortion. It's not fully, the impulse of a new moon, for example, is not fully experienced by us. There's some sort of distortion there. And so it's not going to be fully... we're not going to be fully engaged in in that substantiation or in that, whatever pond we find ourselves in, that's where we are. But for a long time, I was just like, wherever you are, that's where you're going to be. And that eclipse is going to really solidify that to a certain extent. And it's going to draw that reality out for the next 6 months, which is going to be into September and October. And, as we come up into that time frame, there will be a forecast available for the eclipse season. In the meantime, if you're interested to know how this season is going to go for you, I do have the vernal equinox seasonal forecast open now. It's on my website, linked in the description box. You can book right from my website. I am having 2 options to accommodate different price points, so a 60-minute or a 90-minute recorded reading of the next 3 months forecast for you, your natal chart, your progressions, your starseed markings, all the things that are relevant. If you've had your draconic reading, this is something that could get factored in as well. It's very comprehensive, and it will go into the next 3 months. So if you are interested in that, this is something that you can book, like I said, right from my website. It's the only offering other than the normal ones that I have right now. And I'm putting together, and soon this week, thank you for being patient, Catalyst Classroom people. It's been overwhelming. Like, I'm not going to lie. I have a lot of that, my work responsibilities on my plate, as well as, survival responsibilities on my plate, as we all do. And then also, keeping my spiritual practice and my energy practice, my priority, because that's going to be the thing that really, brings us through. So it is coming. I'm doing the research. I'm putting it together. My Defense Against the Dark Arts curriculum. So that's going to be available to the Catalyst Classroom exclusively until I finish the sessions, and then I will bundle it together and make it available. And it's going to cover a lot of different territory about how to defend yourself against what is coming down the shit pipeline. And it's already been here. Like, let's not kid ourselves or delude ourselves that it's not already and hasn't been implemented for a very long time. But there are things we can do to minimize the impact, to protect ourselves, to utilize our natural, endowed, energetic gifts, our ability to manage our biofield, our aura, to utilize the natural energy around us from the earth, from the minerals, right? I would even say the food and the plants, but let's be real, they're also poisoned as well. So we have to be aware of those things. So that's coming. That's coming this week. But otherwise, the vernal equinox, I am leaving space so that I can really focus on that for people if they want a seasonal forecast. So where does that take us up to? The solstice in June. So if you want to see what the spring's going to look like, if you're in the northern hemisphere, if you're going to want to see what the autumn looks like, if you're in the southern hemisphere, you may want to consider booking this reading now so that you can get it before we actually get to the equinox. So now that I got that out of the way, friends, let's take just a brief minute to look at the solar weather. Things are calm right now. They're very calm. There was a filament that erupted on the sun, but the KP is calm and minimal. The solar wind, the solar temperature, the wind temperature, it's all kind of mellowed out a little bit. Here's the KP index. You can see that even over the weekend it dropped, and it's really, really, at the minimum. And if you went and looked at the density of the magnetosphere, the pressure of the magnetosphere, it's also really low right now. We're in this moment where a lot of cosmic rays come in when the magnetosphere is calm and the solar wind is not dense and it's not reverberating very much. So we're in this kind of calm moment right this second. Who knows how long that's going to last? But right now, it's pretty mellow. You can even see the solar wind. You can see that the solar wind is seemingly just like not even a breeze, right? And that the temperature has started to drop. Even the density here is starting, of the particles in the solar wind, is starting to drop. And these indicate that there aren't a lot of disturbances in the magnetosphere. So, and the magnetic field in general. So things are calm at the moment. So let your emotions be what they are. Be authentic in terms of what's coming out of your heart. It's okay if you're worried. It's okay if you're afraid. It's okay if you have tears or you have grief. It's okay if you have joy and excitement. All of those things are legitimate. The most important thing is that you are authentic, because when the creative spirit is moving through you and you are a vessel for your creator, whatever that means to you, coming through your heart space, that is more powerful than trying to shunt yourself into a perspective it's like of anything else. Okay, so be authentic, because it's guiding you to the right place. And that doesn't mean that we don't have things that are really difficult to be facing in the days and weeks ahead. I told you last week, and people in the Starseed Fellowship know, beware the Ides of March. And it really gives me no pleasure to be correct about what is coming with the Ides of March, right? We have the T-square with Mars. Mars is going to square Neptune. The Sun is going to meet Neptune. Then we're going to have a Mercury-Sun conjunction in Pisces. And I also mentioned Mercury coming into Pisces, the fog of war is getting that much thicker, right? It's more difficult to keep a clear headspace when Mercury is in Pisces. So unless your practice is consistent and dedicated, and that you are, whatever it is for you, that you're staying with it, and you know what it sounds like when God is speaking to you and through you, then you can be inspired very easily through your conversation, through your expression, even just through your mental cognitive abilities. But, you're going to see here that people are going to really start to branch off into their own seed points, and that's going to be very difficult. So if you really are trying to hang on to something that is trying to leave your life right now, or is showing up as a moment of massive change, just consider that might be a gift right now, as painful and as awful as it feels, right? That it may be a gift. And this is sometimes blessings don't seem like a blessing at first because of the way that we are being challenged in the moment. But I assure you that we are being attended to as much as we are being challenged, right? But we have to face these challenges, and we can do it together, right? We are here together. So the other things I want to show real quick is I see all of this stuff about the Schumann Oh my gosh. Okay. And then I'm going to check in with the stream. So the Schumann did elevate yesterday over the weekend. You can see that it got elevated. And it's, it's not really a big deal right now. So it did elevate. And there's one thing I wanted to, well, not one thing, but there we go. It looks like the stream is still good. There's one thing I want to share with everyone before we move on. So here is the amplitude, right? So it gets louder, right? The wavelength gets louder. And one of the things I talked about is that I find it really suspicious when all of these vectors, if you want to call them that, these different lines here, when they all are really uniform in their amplification, I find that really suspicious. And I would love it. Is anybody out there an expert in this and can explain it better than I can? Because I've spent the last couple of years really trying to understand what this all means and understand how to read the data, and using my limited background with astrophysics and chemistry and biology and science and research, right? Being scientifically literate to understand what all of this means. But this one, you can see that there was a little bit of difference here. It wasn't uniform, but then this is very uniform in the way it amplifies. That feels artificial to me, right? But now look, it's just these kind of little ripples, just like the ocean. There's like these huge waves, and then there's like these little ripples right now. So there's not much going on, but there was a big spike in the Schumann just a day ago. Now, what I also want to show you is the frequency itself, right? So the frequency of the Schumann is meant to be at 7.83 hertz, okay? And of course, there's variation, and all of these things are like moving around. It's not a static thing, obviously, just like any other like sound wave. But here you see where there is this drop. We always see it every time without fail. Whenever there is an amplification in the Schumann, the pitch drops. Now, the top one didn't drop really, but the bottom three definitely bottomed out. They dropped because if you see here, this is already at, for the most part, is at baseline. Here's 7.84. You come over here and it's pretty much there. So there was other aspects of it that dropped in its frequency, right? What is a frequency? It's the amount of wavelengths per unit of time, right? And the higher the frequency, the more wavelengths per unit of time, the higher amount of energy, right? There's more particles moving within that time frame. But then we had the spike, and then it went way up, almost 8.8, right? Almost to 9 hertz. That's a big jump, okay? And then it evened back out, okay? Whereas these seem to be, they came back up, and then this one came up. That's interesting to me. That's very interesting. Do I think that, of course, the Schumann resonance, do I think that it naturally amplifies? I do think that it naturally amplifies in just like the heart of the planet, just like we naturally amplify when we emote or express ourselves, right? We express ourselves through joy by laughing. We express ourselves through grief by crying, right? We express our anger by yelling, right? Those are all expressions of our emotions, and they come from the heart space. So I think that the earth obviously is doing the same thing, just like all life is going to do that, right? But there's something fishy here when we have these huge spikes in the frequency all of a sudden that go almost an entire pitch up. What is that? I'm still trying to figure it out. I have some ideas, right? I'm not going to say them here on YouTube. Right? Because I don't want to get kicked off here. I really do want to keep trying to stay on here as long as possible. But, for those of you who know, then you know that I really suspect here that there is something happening, that is hijacking this in some way. It's not natural, right? And we have been misled for many years by the New Age Ascension community that this is somehow an extension of our ascension, right? And I fully engaged it. I did, because I didn't know, right? And I was like, that makes sense. But the more that I applied my lived experience to what is happening here, I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. In fact, it makes the opposite of sense. Like, this other perspective makes more sense. Anyway, so things have mellowed right now. So whatever that means, there is this moment of calm. Now, the sun could flare at any moment and send us a CME. There were magnetic filaments that did flare, that did send out CMEs that weren't directed at us, but we might get a side swipe. So just be aware of that we may not have this calm for very long, okay? So we're going to move into the reading here now that I've gone over that with you. So one of the things I want to do is, of course, we're going to just check in with last week's reading because as per usual, I mean, this is becoming a consistent thing that we have, we have some chronology, we have some consistency with the imagery week to week now, and moving either some things are in the same position that are really allowing us to be like, okay, this is important. Or what I do find is that we see that in the linear progression of cause and effect here, that we tend to follow that in a timeline. It's so bizarre. I mean, I can't make it up. I'm doing the thing that I usually do, and this is how it's coming out. So just kind of keep an eye on this here and put a pin right here in this 8 of discs as the effect, right, of this causal effect relationship. And what did I say last week? There was a crystallization of some sort of progress that we were really feeling, but we were going to be led to a place where we really were going to have to exercise what? Prudence. Patience, knowing when to act, being aware of the fruit ripening. Okay, so now that we are going to look at today's reading, if I can find it. I'm really glad that OBS is not crapping out on us. Oh, look at that. The 8 of discs right at the heart of the entire reading, right? The place where the outer forces interact with our energetic polarity. Oh, look, the 8 of discs right in the middle. So we see a progression that is pretty seamless, right? And I'm not sitting here being like, hey, look at how accurate my readings are, and trying to fill my ego. I'm just as floored as anybody else. I'm like, oh, okay, here we are. The 8 of discs right at the heart. And I need to hear this just as much as you do. I mean, it's important to understand that I am going through this with all of you, right? I am just the messenger and the catalyst for your activation, right? Your activating your potential to be, the highest version of yourself through this whole process. And I'm going through it day by day with you and sharing it as it goes along. So, but clearly there is consistency here, and I'm just going to keep rolling with that. So here's our 8 of discs in the heart of the matter, right? That in the heart of it, the patience, the prudence, the mastery of our skill set that requires one foot in front of the other, one day at a time, right? If you rely on your motivation, which over here, that 6 of wands reversed, right? If you're relying on, to feel a sense of victory, to keep you moving, you are not going to have the discipline to push through when it gets really difficult. And I'm telling you guys, we know that that's what's happening. It's just going to get more difficult as we go through and into the spring. And I would say we haven't even really gotten into the new year, right? Of course, the calendar says we're in 2023, but for those of us who follow, a seasonal calendar and, care about astrology at all, we know that the new year starts with the equinox, right? So we're about to come into the new year, but it's already setting itself up. This is how it's going to be moving through the rest of 2023. So do you have the patience, right? Do you have the fortitude to wait to act in the right moment? Or are you going to let this 6 of wands reversed, this sense of victory that's not quite there come through and influence this so that you actually don't make the decisions you need to make? So this is 2 6s reversed, right? The 6 of wands Wands and the Six of Swords on either side are reversed, okay? But we also have another 8, which is Archangel Raphael, right? So there are blessings, there are miracles, there's real healing here that is coming in to our awareness, that is sitting right on top of us, maybe right behind us in a lot of ways. And, you know, of course, the Wolverine here. You're a lot tougher than you think you are, but there is transition coming. The winds of winter solstice. I mean, it's frustrating, right? I'm ready to be outside doing all of my prep work for my property, and I can't because there's just snow everywhere still. So it gets difficult to be like, what's the point? But you can't get caught in that mindset. So let's start. I just want to check in with the stream real quick and see. Okay, everything is good right now. So let's get into this. Like I said, the Six of Wands reversed. So this card upright, the Six of Wands, victory, right? You know, it's just, and it's not a victory that didn't come without some struggle, right? The Five of Wands beforehand is strife. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a victory, but when it's reversed like this, it does suggest that it's not the victory maybe we wanted. Maybe we haven't quite gotten past the strife yet. That's another way to read this, coming into the moment, that we haven't quite gotten past that strife that this represents, the Five of Wands. The struggle to achieve the success is usually what this represents upright, and that it shows that we've reached a really important milestone in our creation, our transformation, right? The spiritual fire that the wands represent. So when it's reversed, there's a couple things here that it can, you know, on the real shadow side, you have reckless egoism, vanity, right? You can see that as well. People being really reckless, being just like out, not being realistic about things, but we may not have quite reached the victory yet. And I would say with the Eight of Discs in the center here, I would say that that's probably more likely the case, that we're being asked to really embody in our hearts that patience and that prudence. But it'll be difficult when coming into the moment, we don't quite feel like we've achieved the success that we've been working towards and struggling towards. The other thing too is that we might have reached a milestone, but we may not really actually want to be very public about it. That's also the case too. But basically, the way I'm seeing this here, especially because we have the Three of Keys. So we have the 6, we have a 6, we have a 3 at the base here. The chess game is always about the chess game, right? The two sides that are battling it out and have their own agendas to win. So, and that's at the root of things right now. And so this also suggests to me that we have to be very aware of where our energy is being directed. And with the Six of Wands, it's easy to get kind of caught up in the fact that we're not achieving the success that we felt very virtuous about, and that we're like, yeah, we're making progress, and we are, right? Now we have to trust nature and trust God or your creator, whatever that means to you. It doesn't matter if you don't ascribe to a particular religious perspective about this. If you are a person that believes in a divine creator that is more than yourself, then you are covered under this, and we have to have trust in that process. That's what it's asking us for, and that's what it asked us for last week too. But this Six of Wands, oh boy, like we're not feeling the victory so much, are we? In fact, we might be feeling either reckless and just not be like, you know what? I'm just not even paying it. I'm not even going to acknowledge this. There's vanity. You might feel more successful than you actually are. But I would say, considering all of this, that this really represents a moment where we don't quite feel victorious. We're like, yeah, kind of, but this isn't what I wanted. This isn't how I envisioned it for myself, okay? Doesn't mean that there isn't some measure of success or victory, but we may not necessarily, and the fire of motivation is maybe not there, right? And just like I said, if you don't have discipline, if you don't have a sense of trust and faith, then when that fire starts to diminish, or things aren't going the way that your ego wants them to go, you're going to pull shit out of the ground early. You're going to give up. Okay? Don't give up. It's important that we understand how important this patience really is. So, speaking of which, just to remind ourselves, here's our 8 of discs, the sun in Virgo, right? Prudence, patience, knowing when to act, waiting for the right moment. And while that's happening, developing your skill, saving your money, right? For instance, that's one way to look at it, right? Get yourself situated financially and materially. Know when the right time to act instead of getting caught up in like, it's not the way that I want. Because without anything else surrounding this, what you'll find is a really hard time to keep your head on straight with the 6 of Swords reversed. Certainly not very scientific at all, actually. So, and it's not very easy with Mercury and Pisces right now to have that perspective, but we'll go over that. So, we already talked about the 8 of discs quite a bit last time. So, now we know it's at the heart to have that patience to while you're waiting for the right time to act, to keep moving forward on your goals, whatever they are, your skills, your practice. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have your practice like a central part of your, whatever it is, your meditation, your prayers, your energy work practice, right? Your biofield practice, whatever it is that you are doing, it's important to keep that as your center point and to be patient, because we're going to need that when it is time to act, right? If you aren't ready to harvest and you don't have your equipment ready, you don't know what to do, you're not tracking the right time, you're not paying attention, you're going to lose all the opportunity to harvest everything that's been growing. So that's that. Now, it's a chess game. We've seen this many times before. The 3 of keys. The keys are the material aspects, political and social conflict. Now, this is Pluto in the last degrees of Capricorn right now, which is the chessboard. We are in store for difficult interactions in group settings. This is at the root of things energetically. So people are fearful. People are worried. There is deceit present when we have this card. People are only out for themselves, and you're not certain of everyone's motivations. And I will tell you what, I've already said it multiple times. When Mars squares Neptune this week, the temptation is to act on confused motivations. All right? Know what your motivations are, and take an emotional or maybe an actual step back, all right? The stronger you hold your position, because you can't let go of something, the more heated it's going to become, and you're just giving all of your energy literally to that situation. No matter how challenging, try to maintain that inner peace, that patience, that prudence. Try to detach and be objective. And when we talk about the guidance around it, we'll see that there's really important reasons for that, because if you can't step back and be objective, you can't read the energy of other people. You can't know when to duck, dodge, and weave out of the way, okay? It's subtle. How do you think a mouse survives? They have to be so tuned into the environment that they are a ghost, right? I mean, it's not often that you you get to see an actual mouse in your house, but you see all the evidence that they're there, right? So we'll get to that. But this chess game at the root here, it's important that you are not feeding the fear, but you are being very realistic about what's going on here, and realize that there's a lot of energy to tap into your lower chakras with this energy and to pull you in to this, okay? But what is really important, and we have 2 8s, right? The 8 of discs, and then Archangel Raphael, right? He's got the green orb and the pink heart chakra, right? So this is a lot for the people, I think, who are in the Reiki attunement right now, because the healing attunement addresses the heart specifically as kind of the center of all of our healing energy. And just like how the blood is pumped by the heart and the chi is in the blood, or the ki, right? Rei, ki, the energy, the bioenergy is in the blood. It's moved through the blood. So the heart is a huge part of it. Archangel Raphael represents, not only is connected to the star Regulus, which is at the last degree of Leo into Virgo right now, but in this tarot deck, it's specifically the Akashic Tarot, right, represents love and miracles, healing. It also shows that helpful others may be attending to you. The times in my life where I was really in danger and needed help, this is where Raphael showed up in my life and literally came as a person that swept me out of the way. Okay, it's going to be different for all people. That's just an example. Now, this is talking about these upper areas, right? Your awareness, your thoughts, your expression, your communication, that crown chakra that we've been talking about to make a sacred space, clearing it out so that you can receive this and know that it's here. And it is about healing. It's about a miracle, right? And people coming into your life to help you seemingly out of nowhere. Or maybe there's resolution to a situation. This is what Archangel Raphael represents. And number 8 is a really important number, right? It is the number of Christ, and especially in Gnosticism. And I'm not advocating for it one way or the other. I'm just letting you know. And it's, of course, the infinity symbol on its side. So now when we get to the Six of Swords, the science, right? Mercury in Aquarius. Well, Mercury is not in Aquarius. Nothing right now is in Aquarius, okay? When it's reversed, sometimes there's too much rationalism. Ooh, I'm seeing that. I am definitely seeing that. People are, and when I say too much rationalism, they are not trusting their gut. They're not even tapped into their gut. They're not even tapped into their intuition. They are just like tapped, too rational about it and not letting their emotions naturally guide them to where they need to be, right? The other read on this is when it's reversed. You know you need to make a change, but are reluctant to do so. You may hope that the situation goes away on its own. Come on, guys. It's pretty cut and dry here. You may, and I'm not suggesting anybody here, but some people, you know, and we're all going through this on some level, that we have to step up and start taking responsibility for the changes we do need to make, because they're not going to go away on their own. This is not just going to resolve itself. We are headed down the pipe, right? You may feel yourself into thinking you can put up with it. That's interesting, huh? That you're just like, you know what? I can just put up with it, right? Whatever it is. I can just, instead of changing, I just put up with it because I'm that much stronger. Sometimes you have to push past your comfort zone so you can evolve as a person. Okay? And turbulent crossing of the river. Right now in the original tarot, the Six of Swords is these two people in a ferry, and they're going across a river, and their backs are turned, and they have their kind of their cape around their head. It's kind of got this somberness, and it's about moving on, mentally moving on. And in the Thoth deck, the science part, you can see everything around it is very chaotic, but in the middle, in this circle where everything is coming together, not only do you have the cross, you have this perfect circle, you have this very balanced geometry in the middle here and in the heart. Right? There is turbulent waters around us. And when it's reversed like this, I would say that, it's going to be difficult, but we have got to push past our comfort zones here and realize that it's not just going to go away, or that we can just feel ourselves. And this is what I was talking about earlier, squashing your own emotions about things and be like, I'm just going to think my way out of this. I don't need to trust any of my emotions about anything. That's not going to work. Now, and this does suggest we are in for a turbulent ride, the Six of Swords. It's not going to be necessarily as easy as it looks upright, where we're just like, oh, I have it totally figured out. No, there's going to be some cloudiness. And again, we're being asked to be patient, prudent, to keep practicing as we are waiting for the right time, because at the root of things, at the root of us, right, there are people in our lives, there are institutions that they do not care about where us and our what's best for us. They are there to pit us against each other. And this could be in your personal life, and I really hate to say it, but it's there. Like, we're all kind of dealing with it in some way, shape, or form, as much as we don't want to acknowledge it's happening, okay? So it's going to be a turbulent ride, guys. It really, really is. So let's look at the mouse, right? So let's look at the guidance surrounding this. The mouse, it says you're overlooking some important details. Pay closer attention. So how do you do that? Pay closer attention to people's body language. Sit back and observe them. Not just take them at their word, but their deed. How do they feel energetically? How do you feel energetically when you listen to someone or watch them speak? You know, are you really paying attention? Pay closer attention to the agreements you're making, the contracts you are making right now. That is really important. Be very aware of this. Have some caution. Have some scrutiny. We're still in a new moon phase that had to do with, you know, exercising some caution and self-protection. Now we have to actually take what we got from the full moon, which was very eruptive, very cathartic in some ways, right? Some people really got shocked, and something really came up out of the depths that really shook them. Other people, maybe not as dramatic, but it's still there. And we still all have to address these things consciously now. We can't put it back in the box. We see full illumination, and we have to now address it and take the initiative to put it into action without all of the impulse that led us up to that point. So overlooking some important details. Pay close attention to what's going on. You have to really look at, you know, who's out for themselves. Maybe someone is deceiving you. Maybe you're getting pulled into the chess game here and not realizing it. And when it comes to manifestation, dance of the spirit, alignment, right? If you want to be aligned and quote unquote manifest, attract to you what it is you actually want in your life, what you want to be growing, what you want to be nurturing and cultivating and nourishing here, it's in the spirit. Not by your strength or your will, but, well, the will is definitely part of it, but the spirit, right? You have to be, and that's the other thing. What are you tapping into when you're like reading people's energy? Syrian starseeds, you know what I'm talking about here. These are the people for the most part. If you have those markings in your chart, chances are you're someone who is very adept at this and has tended to be very insular because you are sizing people up constantly energetically to see if they're trustworthy, that you can bring them into the fold of your personal life, okay? Now the mouse is just like, you know what? We need to be more cautious. We need to scrutinize more of what is going on here because this is not about us. These are elements that have to do with two sides fighting it out with each other, and we're just caught in the crossfire, okay? And maybe we don't even consciously know it yet. And this is what the mouse is like. We have to be much more sensitive to these things and really feel them out. And again, the dance of the spirit, right? It's about being in alignment, and the ability to manifest comes from being in alignment to what your creator has in store for you, you know, what you're here to be doing. When you're in alignment with that purpose, you are in the flow then. So, and you also are able to feel out when things are not good, but you have to take a step back and you have to like not be so subjectively pulled into all of it. Doesn't mean you don't have feelings. You have to give space for those feelings, but those feelings are a guidepost, right? Rather than your identity. And, you know, it's so easy to get pulled into this. So the winds of the winter solstice. So, of course, the solstice from the winter or December is coming to an end. We're in the last 10 days right now. Not even the last week almost of this entire season. Challenges, transitioning, endings, right? And the Wolverine on top of that, saying you're a lot tougher than you think you are, right? Because the Wolverine looks like they aren't a badass, but they're a total badass, right? The Wolverine has really thick skin that can withstand the bite of like poisonous snakes. The Wolverine has these claws that will just tear anything. And they are scavengers. It's true, right? But they're scavengers that will chase off huge predators and then scavenge what those predators have actually, taken down through their hunt, right? It seems kind of like, they're total scavengers, but the thing is that they are completely built for this. And when the Wolverine comes up, it's always that reminder that you are a lot tougher than you think you are, and you're a lot tougher than other people think you are. And to have this surrounding the winds of the winter solstice with change and transition, and Archangel Raphael like at the center of it, like, you are tough, you know the transition is coming, and you have this presence of this Archangel Raphael that represents healings and miracles and help that's right here. But you have to also have faith in yourself, right? Because again, it's going to be a turbulent ride. It's going to be turbulent, and you can't rationalize yourself out of it, okay? You have to actually start coming to terms with what's happening. Okay, which is why the Defense Against the Dark Arts class is going to be really important, because if you don't acknowledge what is actually going on, it's not, how are you going to know what to do, right? So challenges, transitioning, endings, things are ending. We know that. We've known that for a while. And if things are ending in your personal life and you don't want them to end, you really have to take a real big step back and consider what it is about that. Why don't you want it to end? What are you getting out of it that you don't want to end? Is it really, and what are they getting out of it too? This is where that mouse comes in. You have to really be able to feel into this situation. And when you are so invested in this chess game that you can't take a step back and see that's what it is, it's very difficult. But again, the dance of the spirit. Right? The spirit moves you, and in the dancing, this is the rhythm and the oscillation, and then you become connected to your creator, whoever that is for you, connected to source, and then that's where you're in alignment. So, but we have got to get more cautious and really start getting into objective witness mode as we are feeling into what's going on here. So, that's the reading for today. So I want to show you the chart. We should talk about the week that we're heading into, because it is it's pretty intense. So let me take this off here. There we go. And I'm going to bring up the chart. And for those of you in the Starseed Fellowship, you'll be getting your weekly. On Wednesday, as usual, we'll be doing our Zoom call this week. I'll put out the scheduling poll on Subscribestar and get that scheduled for this week as well, so that we can all kind of come together and share and support each other, because it's been a rough week, and it's just, like I said, it's just going to keep getting more turbulent. So I'm going to check in with the stream here as well, make sure it still looks pretty good. Okay, so my friends, it is the 13th of March. So, like I said, we're in our disseminating moon right now. Waning gibbous. The light is starting to fade. The message is being conveyed right now. It's up to us if we're going to listen or not, right? And as of now, the moon has moved into Sagittarius. So it, over the weekend, moved through Scorpio. It met the south node of her own south node, the tail of the dragon, and right as we moved into today, Eastern Standard Time, so midnight-ish, at the very last degree of Scorpio, there was a sextile over here with Pluto at the last degree of Capricorn. So, as I said earlier, when we're talking about Scorpio and the 8th house, right? The 8th house is the Scorpio house. We are talking about the banking system, right? We are talking about the fruits of our labors being brought into relationship and multiplied in some way. So we're talking about Wall Street. We're talking about investment capitalism. We're talking about interest and loans, right? And we're talking about debt. Okay, are we surprised that this went down as the moon was moving through Scorpio, crossing over the south node of the moon, showing where we've already been, which is this sense of like, oh, nothing's gonna shake this foundation, right? I hate to break it to you if you're still thinking that, but the north node in Taurus at 4 to 5 degrees Taurus is a widow standing at an open grave, right? Discarding the past, letting go, understanding that all material and social bonds will disintegrate here in this dimension of reality, because that is the nature of things, okay? And so the moon crosses over the south node, and yes, very powerful to remember where we can come back to and where we have been, but that is not where we are being pulled in order to evolve, okay? So, not surprising to me, especially with Pluto in the last degrees of Capricorn like this. That is the economy in general. If you really want to watch something funny about this, because this is being anticipated to be worse than 2008, right? So, but there's this really great South Park episode about this. And it kind of fits into the story of Jesus too. So and how it's related to the economy. So I can't remember the exact title. So if I can remember it, I'll try to post it if you're interested, or post a clip or whatever if you're into that. But you know, it's pretty funny, and it also really spells it out in terms of how we get here and the shit show that leads us to these situations. So not surprising over the weekend that the moon is moving through Scorpio, reaches the south node in early Scorpio, and then last night has this sextile with Pluto. Now, a sextile between the moon and Pluto often will bring up what is otherwise buried secrets, and stuff that is hidden starts to come to the surface. In the last degree of Scorpio, which by the way is the ruling sign of Pluto, we're looking at a relief from tension, like a socially acceptable relief of tension, because Scorpio is also about the depth of our soul, right? The shadow that we face, staring into the abyss and having to do something with that, right? I mean, we haven't quite gotten into Sagittarius. Well, we are now, but the last degree of Scorpio, it is kind of like that socially acceptable release point with everything that we have seen in the mirror, right? Or staring into the abyss before the Holy Spirit or the fire of transmutation really starts to catalyze what we have discovered. So it's things coming up with that sextile related to Pluto in the last degree of Capricorn as we come into Monday. And we start seeing more and more of, I'm curious to see how things are going to unfold. Like, what is that release from tension? What is that socially acceptable safety valve when it comes to this, that we all individually, as the moon in its disseminating phase, it's like, okay, well, how are we going to respond to the message being conveyed to us about this, about how are we going to find a relief from our own tension as we are pretty much bearing witness to this controlled demolition of our entire financial system globally, right? I think, that was hard to say because that was overnight for those of us in the U.S., and certainly for those of us on the East Coast, because you're looking at like midnight, 1 a.m. So perhaps something came through in dream time, especially when we're talking about Pluto and these deep subconscious things that are being brought to the surface. There's a lot of potential for transformation here. Lots. And I do see that in the reading, right? That there is potential. The other thing here is that it's in the moon is in a square with Lilith, and I'm going to talk about that too in just 1 second. But let's see here. What are the main transits that we got going on today with the moon? See, we had the moon come into Sag, right? And then it's square to Saturn right after that. So again, here's our guilt and our loneliness and depression and restriction and bitterness, because the moon's coming into Sag and our strength is starting to be ignited. But Saturn in Pisces, I wish I could, I do. I wish I could be, I wish I could just be, the rainbow about this, with Saturn and Pisces. It's a karmic deliverance, you can bet. And it's not easy, right? It is not easy. It is the illusion losing all of its luster here. Saturn in Pisces, it's just like the foot is coming down in terms of what it means that we're all together in this, okay? And when you're in Pisces, this is the end of the cycle, right? Just like we're in this Pisces season with the sun here and Mercury here and Neptune here, right? Like there's no, you don't take yourself, when you're a drop in the ocean, you don't like stop being a water molecule in the ocean. You are part of it, and that's part of you. And there's no getting away from that when Saturn's here. And we talked about it in the report for the Starseed Fellowship, the weekly report, is that Saturn is in Pisces until 2026. And it comes out of Pisces. Well, it comes into Pisces, it comes into Aries in 2025 and then retrogrades back into Pisces along with Neptune. But here's the reality. February 2026, Neptune and Saturn are conjunct at 0 degrees Aries. So there is some really, that's a reality that you really don't get out of. And I've heard that that's kind of the planned singularity, right, is 2026. So that doesn't surprise me at all that these two are going to be conjunct at 0 degrees Aries in February 2026. So we have some years with Saturn in Pisces, right? We have some years where that karmic deliverance is going to be a very heavy weight. In terms of our spirit, in terms of our compassion, in terms of what it means for all of us to be together. So it's heavy already. As soon as Saturn came into Pisces, it was like a weight around the neck. I was just like, oh, here we are. And then, again, you can anticipate it all day. You can intellectualize it, you can run the simulation, but nothing takes the place of lived experience. And we have to honor that because that's where the present moment is all we have. And that gives us all the information we actually need. So anyway, the moon is now in Sagittarius. And so it squared Saturn. And as of 10 a.m. Eastern, when I started this, it was in a square to Lilith at Virgo. So of course with Lilith, the tendency here is that we want to blend the dialectic together. We want to have a sense of brotherhood, of sisterhood. We want to have our duality find a way to play happily together, right? Well, the square here with the moon in Sagittarius is and remember that Lilith is the lunar apogee, right? It is that place in the lunar orbit that's the furthest away. And when we feel cut off from this energy, we will try to force it anyway, rather than allowing the void to be there. There's a lot of this energy here of allowing the void to be in order to have a space in which new creation can come in. And that's very, very difficult and scary when it has been something you have based your entire life on, and now is being taken away or is going away, and there's just a void here. And the square from the moon is actually, I think, one of those moments of can you feel into, can the living soul of the moon, still it's in its disseminating phase, can you receive the message of that there is support, that there is someone that's helping you along spiritually, or in your relationships in general, right? Sagittarius is that fire, right? That catalyzing, transmutational, alchemical fire at the coal fire that is so hot that it cooks, right? And it's the friction in our relationships that creates that fire. But there's something so powerful about it, it actually changes the chemical structure of things, right? This is why we cook with fire, right? It changes the chemical structure and allows things to be easily digestible for the most part. Sometimes you can overcook things and then you are denaturing all of the proteins and they're turning into toxic things. This is why you're not supposed to heat up things like honey, right? Don't cook with honey, right? You should never do that because it turns it into a toxic substance and then it is actually having a negative effect on you. So that's something I learned in Ayurvedic medicine. They've known this for thousands of years that you don't cook honey, right? And a lot of times, actually, they don't recommend it at all for people that have a high pitta, have a high fire, because honey will actually increase that. Anyway, that's a digression. The point I'm trying to make here is that we want to blend together these, Lilith is so desperate to have this, and the moon is giving us just this moment of like, we don't have to do it all ourselves, right? That there is a relationship with God or creator, with source, that allows us to tap into that support, to tap into someone like Archangel Raphael, for instance. It's just an idea at that moment. So, and then the moon's going to come into a quincunx, right, with the North Node right after this. This is probably happening right now, actually, if we move ahead, to, where are we? We're just about 11:30 Eastern on the stream. So yeah, we're coming into by noon, you're going to see a direct quincunx with the moon in Sagittarius, with the North Node, right? Her own North Node. And that quincunx is an inconjunct. It requires us to adjust ourselves. It is a moment where these things don't fit together and we have to find a way to transmute that situation or make an adjustment or change something, especially internally and at a soul level, because we're talking about the moon and the North Node of the moon, which is the trajectory of our soul. And the moon is the living soul, right? It is the mediator from the sun's energy to our lived experience. And 5 degrees of Sagittarius is an old owl sitting in a tree, right? How do we take the ability to see what other people don't really see, right? Because the owl is a predator. It's nocturnal, right? It sees in the dark, right? And it's not exactly a great omen, but in this case, it sees in the dark. And it gives us a sense of translucidity here that emotionally we can tap into. And yes, it will feel like these things don't fit together as our soul is pulling us into this place of a void, right? Where we have to accept and discard the past. But there is a sense of real wisdom that we can tap into individually that is going to allow us to transmute this and adjust to this situation that is happening, as I'm broadcasting right now. So even just listening to this may be enough to kind of give you the perspective to make an adjustment, okay? So the moon's going to move through Sagittarius, and tomorrow, like I said, we have our first quarter moon, third quarter moon. For the life of me, I cannot get that right. So it's going to be very close to the galactic center, as we're going to see. And it's going to be in a T-square with Mars. And I talked a lot about this for those of you who got the astrology report. Let's just say that this is where... Beware the Ides of March, guys. So the third quarter square happens like right at the changeover of Tuesday into Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time. And, what do we look at when we look at a T-square? Well, we look at the ghost point. Oh, it's over here in late Virgo, right? About, actual participation in the presence of God, the creator, right? Prudence. Oh my gosh, right? We have to be able to trust the natural process to unfold. We have to have undaunted faith as things maybe go, especially because of where Venus is, right? Venus is in conjunction now with the Andromeda galaxy, and having a sense of embodied freedom, of liberty, right? Andromedan galaxy energy is truly about that, is about freedom to be oneself at any given moment. But that comes with a responsibility to the impact of those decisions, right? That we can make a lot of decisions, but they have an impact on everything around us. And yes, Venus is in this place of like, I want to be free. And we have to be aware of how those decisions and those actions are going to influence other people as well. And ourselves, right? And this, the ghost point of the T-square with the moon square the sun, the moon square Neptune, Mars opposite. Look at this. I mean, it's not just the first quarter square. You have Neptune involved with Mars as well. And then right after that, on the 16th, the Sun and Neptune come together. And this has the potential to be absolutely just like false prophets, or the other side of that is like really powerful identification, expression with one's connection to source or God or your creator, whatever. Imagination, compassion, unconditional love. It's seamless. But Mars involved in this process. People, the temptation is to act on confused motivations, and I assure you they're going to do that, right? So you want to pay attention to this ghost point over here, because it's one thing to be like, oh, I can anticipate all of the wonderful things that are on their way, and I can like feel into the rhythm of that, and that's important. But come back to the patience that you have to exercise here with the ripening of your own fruit, right? That you are that you're here to act in the best interest. Your service is to your community or to humanity, right? It's not to yourself. And when it's only to ourselves, it doesn't have any staying power. And in fact, this is where inversion and corruption really come into the picture. So beware the Ides of March, right? I mean, it's already building, okay? It's already building. And I just want to show you that by the time we get to the 16th which is Thursday, we have the Sun and Neptune, like I said, come into a conjunction, and Venus and Pluto come into a square at their last degrees, right? Remember what I said about the last degree of Aries? This is the realization of our boundaries, and some people are going to realize that they are trapped. And this square is actually, I think personally, a blessing. It's going to be really difficult, and people will do all kinds of crazy shit in their relationships when Venus squares Pluto, right? Gaslighting, manipulation, trying to control people because they are afraid. And I would say, considering that Pluto is in Capricorn, we're really talking about the demolition of the financial system and people when it comes to their resources and their finances, because that's a lot of what Venus represents, where our security and comfort comes from. Coming to terms with, oh, this is my little duck pond that I'm in, and is that where you want to stay? I think it's important to take this really seriously, because if you do and you know what this means and you're prepared for it, that's great, because when the solar eclipse comes, this is where you'll be for the next 6 months and how it's going to play itself out. But if you come to, this situation and you are put up against all of this crazy ass energy, especially with Mars square Neptune, it's going to be really gnarly. So again, now you see why it's so important to detach, to be objective, to take a step back, either emotionally or physically, right? To take advantage of those moments that seem like your life is falling apart and everything's taken away from you, and be like, oh my God, this is such a blessing, because if I were trying to push this and keep it here, maybe it's going to be so much worse. And I'll be stuck with it. Like I said, people will do all kinds of crazy shit when Venus and Pluto are squared to try to control their relationships because they're afraid of losing them. And I would say people are going to, the bank runs are just going to get that much more intense with something like this as well, because people are going to be like, oh shit. And they're already happening. Guaranteed. We're going to see more of this by Wednesday and Thursday, big time. And people are going to be acting crazy. And then you have St. Patrick's Day on Friday, the 17th, all of the alcohol involved is not going to help this situation, like, at all. Not at all. So, boy, oh boy, my friends. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I certainly am not going to, I'm not going to fluff it up for you, either, because we need to be ready for this. So, and we've been talking about this for a long time. It's not anything new to those of you who have been here, but you can see how it's all playing out now, and you have a lot clearer vision of where we're going. So it's not about living in fear. It is about facing your fear, using that energy that is natural to you and your feelings, and being courageous and believing in yourself. And you may today realize, hey, something has not gone the way that I want it to go. Maybe that's a blessing, so that I can imagine how I'm going to do this, right? So not every failure means that what you're trying to accomplish is a bad thing, right? And that Six of Wands reversed, that may be the blessing here of like, you know what, maybe this is not as victorious as I thought, or maybe I'm not feeling the victory, but that's because I need to reimagine this situation so I could make different decisions about, I don't know, my relationships, my resources, all of these Venus things that she represents. Because when she comes into Taurus, which is her home, she is firmly planted there, right? And she is just going to be a magnetic well, pulling everything to her in a good way, right? Now, Juno, asteroid Juno, which you don't see on this chart, also passed over this and is now in Taurus. So in the next 2 days, probably around the middle of the week, she's also going to be in conjunction with the North Node at 4 to 5 degrees Taurus, a widow standing at an open grave. So just be prepared that the goddess that represents the actual balancing of the scales and will balance them, right, regardless of how you feel about it, is going to reach this point of our soul's evolution that's going to be like wiping the slate clean, right? Discarding the past. So we have to be brave, right? And do we have undaunted faith in what we're here to do, right? Are we going to allow the upsets and the turbulence to completely, fold us over? And some people will, and that's going to be very difficult for those people who are close to us, right? And it'll be hard not to feel that, and it's going to be difficult for us not to feel that, but we have to have some undaunted faith in ourselves. And of course, the moon's going to move through Capricorn, coming into Thursday, Friday, and the weekend, and then cross over Pluto over the weekend. And so then the living soul taps right into this whole controlled demolition, and you're like, oh, right? I feel that big time. So that might be an awakening moment for lots of people. We'll see. We'll see. And by this time, you'll also see that Saturn is at the same degree of the new moon, 2 degrees of Pisces, right? So did you take precaution? Did you actually gather all of your nuts like the squirrel and maintain like a sense of camouflage? Because Saturn here is going to be like, okay, now it's time to account for all of this. And it's okay, right? It's okay. People, you don't need to scramble or get yourself all worked up and be like, oh God, right? Because there are going to be plenty of people that have done that. Mercury is going to square Mars. Look at this. I mean, again, you're going to find yourself, and Mars is coming out of its retrograde shadow at this point too. So we're really Mars is going to shoot out of the place where it has been safely nestled for months now into brand new territory. And as we are just like, oh, I realize now that that's all coming to harvest. All coming to harvest. And part of that too is that that's where the sun is. So we're also going to have this Cazimi, right? This Mercury Sun conjunction of like the light bulb going off and being like, oh, it's all come to harvest. Like it's completely culminated now. And Mars is ready to shoot out the gate in terms of repolarizing everything. So we have to be ready for this. This is going to be quite the week, guys. And then we come into next week and let's see here. Next week, Monday, the next time we come together, is going to be coming into the equinox, right? And Venus will be in Taurus by that point. Mercury will be in Aries at that point, and the sun will be coming in balsamic moon going through Pisces. So now when Mars comes into Cancer, you rest assured that the People are going to be really, really putting that warrior energy into defending their homes, defending their families, and also to there's going to be a lot of push into the home as well. So we're in for it, guys. We definitely, definitely are. So it's not that we haven't been prepared for this either. So just keep your heads up. We're going to be okay. But be aware of what's going on. Don't get caught with your pants down, and certainly don't, you don't want to let the fear take you over, right? So I really thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of you very, very much. If you're interested in the vernal equinox seasonal forecast for yourself, you can go to the website that is linked in the description box below. I'll just bring up the flyer one more time to show you. You can go to the description box below, link to my website. You can book right from the homepage, and there are options to meet your financial situation, which I understand, believe me, I understand is so tenuous right now. So, but having an idea of what to expect in relation to these things can really help you plan ahead and not be blindsided when stuff is coming up in the next couple of months. But in the meantime, you guys have a safe, and week. Keep your heads on straight as much as you can. Reach out for support. If you are doing the Reiki healing attunement, I will be posting and sending the email today with all of the crystals that I want to go over. I did the attunements all weekend. People have been reaching out, and it is normal. And it does happen that as we get deeper into these attunements, and that energetic template, along with this crystal grid, is being basically activated every single day with people, and as much as you're participating in it on your own end, it will start to push things out that are dormant. So whatever healing issues you're working on, whatever is part of that is gonna come to the surface, and it manifests in different ways. So if you need extra support, and because that's happening, please reach out, okay? Just respond to the email that I send out every day. So, but in the meantime, for everyone else, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much for all of your comments, your participation, your investment in yourself. So I'll see you next week. Take care, everyone. Have a good week as best you can. And I love you guys. Bless you. Bye.